Intervention studies. Interventions to improve the academic performance of poor children, predominantly and sometimes exclusively black, also test the theory that the race difference in IQ is due entirely to poor environments. This theory predicts that exposure to rich environments of the sort such programs will provide will markedly improve the IQs of at-risk black children. The failure of these programs is described in Spitz, 1986, and Curry and Thomas, 1995. Three characteristic efforts are the Perry Preschool Program in Ypsilanti, Michigan, the Milwaukee Project, and Head Start. In the Perry program, black children with IQs from 50 to 85 were given special classes for 5 years and tracked until age 19 against controls. In the Milwaukee Project, children 6 months of age or younger of low IQ black women spent large parts of each day for 5 years in an infant stimulation center. There were also extensive home visits and remedial education for the mothers. In each case, the experimental children made large gains in IQ and academic performance while the program lasted, but these gains disappeared after the program came to an end. For instance, by the 4th grade, the experimental children in the Milwaukee group were at the 10th to 11th percentile in mathematics, only 2 percentiles above the controls. In each case, the IQs of the experimental children had fallen to the level of the control children by the age of 15. Neisser et al., 1996, agree that in such studies, quote, long-run gains have proved more elusive, end quote. Ironically, the early gains of the experimental groups in these studies appeared to result from, quote, teaching to the test, end quote, the common criticism of white IQ test performance. Head Start, the best-known enrichment program, has at this writing become something of a scandal. Project Follow-Through, introduced when Head Start children were not maintaining their early gains, also failed to produce lasting differences either in academic achievement or IQ, as measured by the Ravens matrices. In a study comparing the performance of Head Start children with siblings who did not participate in the program, Curry and Thomas found that, while at age 10 white children retain a gain of 5 percentile points on the Picture Peabody Vocabulary Test, quote, by age 10, African American children have lost any benefits they gained, end quote. This dissipation of benefits is uncorrelated with black home environments. Likewise, a small but statistically significant inverse correlation for whites between Head Start participation and repeating a school grade was not matched by blacks. So somehow, white people benefited from this program, and black people did not. Must be racism. Only explanation. Its advocates now characteristically endorse Head Start for its positive effects on social behavior rather than intellectual ability. Moving the goalposts. An article in Scientific American purporting to show that it abuses science to argue that intervention does not boost IQ ends by walking away from IQ, arguing instead that, quote, providing education can help low IQ individuals in other ways, end quote. Health benefits are often cited. However, Curry and Thomas found that, as measured by height for age, participation in Head Start had no effect on health. In any case, such non-intellectual benefits of Head Start, as there may be, are irrelevant to the main point. Contrary to environmentalist predictions, intervention beginning at age 3 makes no difference to the intellectual development of blacks. Perhaps surprisingly, intervention for whites does, indicating a possible non-social race difference in receptiveness to stimulation. So they were trying to disprove genetic causes for intellectual disparities, and they actually ended up proving yet another genetic difference. Good job, guys. Keep shooting yourself in the foot, digging your own grave. So, possible non-social race difference in receptiveness to stimulation. Curry and Thomas neglected to consider this possibility, limiting their hypotheses to, quote, heterogeneity in program delivery or the types of schools that whites and African Americans attend once they leave the program, end quote. However, on their own showing, Head Start programs tend to be uniform, and the conventional environmentalist explanation of fade out is that enrichment programs begin too late, after environmental factors have affected black children. So do blacks do poorly because of how they were treated before the program, or during the program, or after the program, or maybe it's their genes? But let us look at one specific factor very often proposed, namely malnutrition, in turn attributed to racism. The denial by whites of childcare information for blacks, or black prospects so dim that black parents ignore their children's well-being. Now, a nutritional deficit might equally well be a passive environmental correlate of genes. After all, no external source provides whites with childcare information. On the correlate hypothesis, low black parental intelligence is transmitted to children and causes black parents to select poor diets for their children. But in fact, black children eat as well as white. I don't know about that. According to a 1985-1986 survey by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, described in Rector and McLaughlin, 1992, black preschool children consume 56.9 grams of protein daily to 52.4 grams for white preschool children, both quantities more than twice the U.S. daily recommended allowance. Children in families 75% below the poverty line, a disproportionately black cohort, consume about as much vitamins A, B6, B12, C, and E, thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, phosphorus, and magnesium as children in families 300% above the poverty line, and more than the USRDA, recommended daily allowance. Both poor and non-poor consume less than the USRDA of calcium, zinc, and iron by about the same amount. Banfield, in 1974, cites a 1955 Department of Agriculture survey showing that the diets of the lowest income third in cities receive more than the USRDA in calories, protein, minerals, calcium, iron, and vitamins. Since malnutrition retards bone ossification, the relatively greater speed of ossification of cartilage in black children indicates adequate nourishment. Such black precocity is in fact characteristic. Up to 18 to 24 months, black infants outpace white infants in muscular and neurological development, playing patty cake, walking with help, standing alone, and walking alone, and exceed white infants in the Gesell development quotient when age is controlled for. So if they're malnourished, why are they so much stronger so much earlier? This offset favoring blacks is inconsistent with greater black malnutrition. The simplest explanation of the failure of intervention, then, is that non-environmental factors account for black IQ. And by non-environmental factors, hopefully you figured out, he means genes. That is the simplest explanation. Occam's razor. Seems to be a little too sharp for some. Certainly sharper than those who refuse to use it. And I guess it's cutting a little too deeply. Hopes for intervention programs obviously assume that intelligence is teachable, a proposition in whose defense Fisher et al. Commit a fallacy of remarkable grossness. Quote, "If intelligence is defined as mental self-management, intelligence can be taught. The very existence of business schools attests to our confidence that management skills can be taught." End quote. Similarly, if intelligence is a matter of identifying relations, quote, "then students can certainly be taught them. We regularly teach small children to recognize thousands of relationships among a small set of signs." End quote. Finally, they reason, quote, "because every expert was once a novice, somehow novices must learn to think like experts. Differences in how novices and experts process information could therefore be taught as part of mental self-management." End quote. If intelligence can be taught, then why can't you teach someone with a 50 IQ to get a 150 IQ? It will literally never happen. Anyway, yet the very question at issue is whether every individual or every group can learn mental self-management, relations, or anything else at the same rate. Whether, that is, all individuals and groups are equally phenotypically intelligent, and whether any individual or group difference in the capacity to learn mental self-management and relations are due to genetic variations. Why are white children better than black children at this skill by the 5th year of life? The alternative paradigm Fisher et al. Present does not even address this issue. Forget that in this context, appeal to business school management techniques is an equivocation. Defining intelligence as something learnable invites us to ask about the comparative abilities of blacks and whites to learn to be intelligent. A difference in this ability, whatever it is called, leaves intelligence beside the point. So basically these people are conflating the ability to learn management with the ability to learn to be intelligent, which is not the same thing. Obviously, should be obvious, but oh well. Black athletic ability. The hypothesized malnutrition of blacks also conflicts with blacks' greater average mesomorphy. A mesomorph is a person with a compact and muscular body build, and success in sports. Undernourished children should not grow up to dominate sports at all levels. In fact, the remarkable athletic attainment of blacks merits fuller discussion. American blacks are widely perceived to be the most prominent in sports requiring fast reflexes and sudden exertion, such as boxing, sprinting, jumping, hurdling, and basketball, a stereotype acknowledged in the title of the popular movie White Men Can't Jump. In a literature review, Molina, 1988, confirms that blacks do excel in the dash, the long jump, and vertical jumping. Blacks are overrepresented in baseball, but particularly so in the outfield, where a premium is placed on fast starts, speed, and power hitting. Blacks in football are typically running backs, seldom quarterbacks. I wonder why. I wonder if being a quarterback requires more intelligence. Moving on. Worthy and Markle, 1970, argue that blacks dominate positions that require quick reaction, while whites dominate positions from which actions are initiated, such as quarterback and pitcher. By contrast, blacks are underrepresented in sports requiring concentration and control, such as tennis, golf, bowling, and, with the exception of East Africans, distance running, despite the wide availability of facilities for most of these activities, and are virtually absent from competitive chess, bridge, and Scrabble, games heavily dependent on mental ability. The scarcity of black swimmers can be explained by blacks' greater mesomorphy, which implies a lower ratio of fat to denser muscle tissue and consequent lower buoyancy. The advantage in this case of explaining a sports difference physiologically rather than psychosocially, as by low self-esteem and racism, is characteristic. Unlike psychosocial variables, physiological variables can account for the pattern of black achievement. Amma et al., 1986, have verified that African blacks have relatively more fast twitch muscle tissue than whites, a trait American blacks presumably share. In addition to having less body fat, American blacks are on average stronger and have heavier bones, longer extremities, and narrower hips, differences sufficient to explain attainment where jumping and speed are needed. Moreover, race differences in jumping and running are present by age 5 or 6, and many observers unaware of the Gesell scale have commented on the motor precocity of black children. These differences persist when social class is controlled for, further weakening socioeconomic explanations of black sports attainment. The popular theory that blacks choose sports as a way out of poverty leaves it mysterious that blacks should choose a path through basketball rather than tennis, or mathematics, said by the same theory to be the Chinese route to the American mainstream. Furthermore, the flight from poverty theory provides no mechanism by which a desire to excel creates ability. Ambition inspires practice, but it also inspires whites to practice, with less impressive results. A rather fanciful sociological theory has it that whites let blacks excel in sports to confirm the stereotype of black physicality. The obvious difficulty with this theory is the absence of evidence for and the abundance of evidence against the motive it ascribes. Colleges and professional teams certainly appear to recruit black and white athletes for the sole purpose of winning. A sports team is not going to pick a bunch of black people just to confirm stereotypes. They want to win. A less obvious but equally serious objection is that white desires for black excellence could not enable blacks to excel, nor direct black efforts into the particular channels they take. Why should whites wishing to confirm black physicality make blacks outstanding boxers but mediocre swimmers? Again, a sociological hypothesis fails to explain the pattern of black performance. Far from supporting racism as an explanation of overall low black attainment, the exclusion of blacks from professional sports until the 1940s undermines it. What the late integration of sports shows is that as soon as blacks were allowed into professional athletics, where their talent was equal to the opportunity, they rose rapidly. If American whites are racist, why do they avidly follow the 90% black National Basketball Association and the 66% black National Football League? At present, affirmative action makes it easier for blacks to enter science, business, and higher education than it ever was to enter sports. No money is spent to increase black representation in basketball or football. The great number of athletic scholarships awarded blacks are merit-based. At the same time, the National Science Foundation and the National Institute of Health alone have spent over $2 billion since 1972 on programs to increase black representation in science. Despite medical college admission test scores much lower than those of whites, over 80% of blacks in medical school receive scholarships, and the acceptance rate of blacks to elite colleges is much greater than that of whites with superior records. That blacks fare better in sports than other fields suggests that black absence is not due to lack of opportunity.